Welcome everyone to another live digital Kava session here on the Polynesian Eyes podcast. We are currently running live on Facebook, YouTube, Patreon, and Instagram. And last but not least, our cousin Elon Musk, who finally gave us Starlink in Tonga on X. So pretty excited. We welcome everyone. Masi, how's everything in your neck of the woods?
Ooh, my neck of the woods in South Auckland is pretty good. Beautiful day today in New Zealand. Pretty clear sky, a little cloudy, but pretty good for this time of the season. Working from home today, I did a little, little stuff between, working from home like everybody else. When you work from home, I did some load of laundry and then took out some cushion because it was a nice day. Some cushion and stuff outside just to air it out because most of the days are always rainy
Mm.
during this time. So it was a beautiful day today, but overall pretty good. How about you? How's good old Texas? That
Dude,
side?
love Texas. Can't go wrong. Um, it was
Feel the
it's
heat?
actually dude, it was actually a beautiful last couple of days. We've had some storms, flood warning
Mm,
here. We've had some thunderstorms, which is nice because it cools down the weather from the heat because
mhm.
it gets pretty hot. And then also it was Latu Tama's birthday on the 21st. Today was Sita's birthday. And we're gonna discuss one of um the studies that Grok shared with us, saying this is one of the primary reasons why he believes. Well, let me see here. How come I don't see our? There we go. I have to open it. We're going to look at one
It's
of the
the
studies.
article.
Yes, one of the studies that Grok highlights as to how and why he came to the conclusion that the Tu'i
It's more
empire
likely an
is
empire.
more
Yeah.
likely to be an actual empire and existed as an actual empire than
The Tuimanua.
the Tu'imanua. I want to see if I can zoom in just a little bit more.
There we go.
So this is a study. I don't know if it shows the date. 2014. Well, that's when the study was approved for this journal.
Mm,
So it could have been done, let's say 2010 to 2014. It's done
hmm.
by a kind of like a coalition
Yeah.
of universities and
Australia,
so forth. And
University
yeah,
of Arizona. Yeah.
yeah. And we're just gonna walk through obviously some of the main highlights, and we're gonna focus on a couple of the graphs.
Mm,
So as we're going through it, guys and gals, if you guys have any questions, shoot it up in the chat. We'll bring it up as we go through. I'll just read a couple sentences here, and then Masi, let me know if
okay.
there's anything you want to discuss or you want to continue reading for us. But
Okay.
it says Tonga was unique in the prehistoric Pacific for developing a maritime state that integrated the archipelago under a centralized authority and for undertaking long distance economic and political exchanges in the second millennium AD. Now, I really want to highlight how, this is a lot packed into that first sentence. This is the reason why when we have conversations about the Tu'imanua and the Tu'ipulotu quote unquote empires, we can't find a lot of economic or political influence or structure like this is saying. This is why it's saying that Tonga is unique in the sense we can with relative confidence point to economic and political exchanges throughout Polynesia.
Mm,
I haven't seen anything of substance for the Tu'imanua and the Tu'ipulotu.
Tupelo.
We have some oral history. We don't disregard oral history. We recognize it does have some value, but the way to strengthen oral history is to tie it to archaeological or some type of scientific backing. Any thoughts on that, Masi, before I continue?
Nope. Nope.
Any
Go ahead. Go
comments?
ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. Joe.
To establish the extent of Tonga's maritime polity, we geochemically analyzed stone tools excavated from the central places of the ruling paramounts, particularly lithic artifacts associated with stone-faced chiefly tombs. Now, they're referencing those are the langis
That's in Tonga.
throughout Mua, and especially in Mua, because that's where you'll find
Correct.
more, because that's the largest and the longest Tuitonga settlement of the
Correct.
6 settlements. The lithic networks of the Tongan state focused on Samoa and Fiji, with one axe or stone axe sourced to the Society Islands 2,500 kilometers from Tongatapu. Now, people say, oh, there's no connections to Eastern Polynesia. All of Tonga's connections are to Western Polynesia. Well,
Correct.
this
Correct.
directly makes a connection to the east to test the hypothesis that the non-local lithics were especially valued by Tongan elites and were an important source of political capital. We analyzed pre-state lithics from Tongatapu and stone artifacts from Samoa. In the Tongan state, 66% of work stone tools were long-distance imports, indicating that the inter-archipelago connections intensified with the development of the Tonga polity after 1200 AD. Any comments on that? Looks like we have a comment from the chat, but any thoughts on that, Masi?
No, that really solidifies of what an empire looks like, right? You got other islands of Polynesia, 66% of the tools that they found in Tonga, and this is the kind of, and this is the Western education that really helps, I don't, that is good, because one, they're just analyzing the tools. The part of the, the ones we kind of come in conflict with are the academics who kind of give their own in perspectives. They're not, this is what Western society really helps to kind of uncover the Polynesians. They're just using the technology that we have, analyzing, dating where all these tools come from, and
what is the
they give
data
it,
telling us?
what is the data? And that's what I like about it. They're just giving the data. I'm not a fan of these academics who are just trying to just give us interpretation of their own, which they're not the source from. That's the issue we run into.
Yeah.
And this is what I like. They just give us the data. 66% of their findings, the tools that they found in Tongatapu, particularly in in the in Mua, they're finding that all of them came from other islands, and that's an indication of an empire, people paying tribute to
Yeah.
the emperor, or the most powerful title in all of Polynesia, and that really indicates that there, what, like AI was saying, Gronk, that Tuitonga was an empire. So that's all I really wanted to say on that. Like I said, I know we had one of our viewers that mentioned that the Tui Manua had trading routes
Yes.
that really they focused on. But like I said, the trading routes don't. If you're trading with other Pacific islands, you would find some evidence of majority of the materials there would be outside of Manua, or out of Ha'amoa, to prove that. And also the reason of why this solidifies our point of Tonga being an empire and Polynesia being one. So
Yes.
yeah, that's no, pretty awesome article, but glad you found it to us, so we can discuss with our viewers, and it's just a discussion to try to understand our origins. So
Yeah.
pretty cool.
And this is the thing. We get accused. Maybe I'm overly defensive about it, but I keep bringing it up. We get overly accused of two things: being disrespectful for our history, right? And I'd say, what history am I being disrespectful to? You mean the oral history that could or could not be correct, right? When there's competing oral history,
Yeah.
you have an oral history from Samoa. You have an oral history from Fiji. You have an oral history from Tahiti. You have an oral history from all the different islands, many times contradicting each other.
Correct.
And so we're not trying to be disrespectful. We're trying to say, with all these different ideas, which one of these we can't all be correct, right? Where we're all saying opposite things. So there's that part of that. The other thing that we get criticized on quite a bit is we're only promoting Tonga. Well, it's just because two things. A lot of the evidence seems to point to Tonga, and this is one of them when we're discussing them. The other thing is when we reference Tonga, we're talking about the capital of a nation, which was all of Polynesia. So we are all one people. All we're
Mm,
trying to say is where was the capital, right? That's the only thing we're not trying to divide. We're actually trying to bring everybody together and say Tonga is a testament of the shared knowledge and experience throughout the entire empire because of all that collected experience and knowledge deposited on the Tuitonga, because that's like the collective experience of the entire nation. That's the only reason why, well, and God, we obviously believe in God, but in regards to human and human knowledge and experience was in the Tuitonga because it was the center of the empire. You remove that and you put it in Samoa, you put
yeah,
it in Tahiti, or you put it everywhere else, that would have been the island that would have probably
correct.
maintained independence. But we're just trying to say we are
There's a
one people. We want everybody to come together, but the only way we can come together is if the truth is known and understood. And we're
mm.
just trying to present what we find to be the truth.
No, and another thing I was just thinking too. I know they've used this word umiti, another way of paying or people coming to exchange of goods in Manua. It was like our form, their form in
Yes.
Manua, umiti with our bolo and inasi. That's another reason why there's really
Hmm.
no findings in um, Manua with their form of paying tributes to the Tui Manua. There was no evidence of that, so there was no really umiti, and that could have been, like I said, it could have been. I don't know. You know what? I'm not gonna be too harsh. It's probably umiti, probably within the family of Tui Manua, paying tributes, and just within them. But like, yeah, umiti did not involve all of Polynesia. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And yeah, and we're gonna see here that, well, this next sentence is kind of the reason what you're saying that it's not likely, right?
yeah,
The Umiti was multi-island or thousands of
correct,
miles. Is it
correct.
says here, in contrast, stone tools found in Samoa were from local sources,
Mm,
including tools associated with a monumental structure contemporary with the Tongan state. That's the Pulelele Mound
mm,
that
mm-hmm,
everybody, we've had multiple people say, oh,
correct.
we the Tui
It,
Manua had this, and it was like, dude, that was during the Tui Tonga time. And that, at least until we find new data, that's what it's
yeah,
pointing to.
correct,
Network
correct.
analysis of lithics entering the Tongan state and of the distribution of Samoan axes or adses in the Pacific identifies a centralized polity and the products of specialized lithic workshops, respectively. So what
Mm,
this is saying is the movement of the Samoan stones and its finding and the diversity of finding in Tonga shows that it was the center of the politics in the empire, but Samoa had a specialty skill in making those axes. And
mm,
and that's why, and we'll look at a graph later on, that's why we find these axes and we have a theory as to how it got distributed
mm,
throughout the other parts of Polynesia. But when we get to that graph, we'll talk about it.
mm.
Um, these results indicate that a significant consequence of social complexity was the establishment of new types of specialized sites in distant geographic areas. This is important.
Mm,
In Fiji, the Tuitonga Empire identified what's the unique resource that Fiji could give to the empire. It was the giant trees to build the major kalias. So
transport.
Fiji, yes,
Mm,
Fiji became like the quote unquote ship production, right?
mm,
Certain Tongans went there, were lived there, and they were that was the resource. From this, we know that at the very least, stone axes was a specialty production out of Samoa. That seems
mm,
to be the most prolific stone axe used in the Polynesian Empire. We're starting to see a form of economy, like they're saying here, specialization. What are you good at?
Mm-hmm.
Which part of the empire was really good at making axes? Well, it seemed like our ancestors all agreed
Mm-hmm.
Samoa had the best either rocks or the best craftsmen and the best resources to make stone axes. Fiji had the resources to build the giant canoes for traveling thousands and thousands of miles. We're starting to see what you would expect, like you said, out of an empire. Any thoughts
Correct.
there, Mussy?
No, that correlates that story of why people from Ha'amoa were specialized using their materials from Upolu and Savai and probably Tutuila too, coming to Tonga because even our family land called Lakuanga Fue is
Yes.
a reference to Samoan or Ha'amoa workers coming because they built the
Pie pie.
Namuala that's
Yeah.
behind Pai Terea, that's behind our property.
Yes.
And that correlates with why Hamoas was specialized in that because they
Stone
had the
carving,
stone
axes. They
carving
they were
axes.
that was a skill set that the Samoans had. And when we say
Yeah,
Samoans, once again, we're not saying like it was an independent country. It was all Polynesian Empire, but
we were all
we
one.
have to
Yes,
speak that way just so that we understand what places we're talking about.
correct, correct.
Let's pause there real quick. We do have a handful of comments. I don't want it to
Okay.
get too far behind us. In most island group, the name Tonga is in reference to the town of that island. Even on the compass, if you follow the direction Tonga, you will find civilization there for Tonga. That's a fair point. Just look at Kona, right? It's on the biggest island there, and it's also the most southern point.
Mhm.
Obviously, so yeah, there could be some points to that. Any comments?
No, no comments. Good question, Shonetang.
Hey, Fifita,
Oh,
Malo, thank
Vivita.
you for the shout out. Welcome. You joined quite a bit earlier, but we're just finally getting to the comments here to make sure we don't get too far. The Atenisi crew rely too much on the Heliakis. Any thoughts
Yeah.
on that, Masi?
No, and that's I kind of referred to it earlier, Kurt, that the history where it implies your lot of your perspectives, and like I said, it's fine giving your perspective, and then we have to ask, okay, then what family you come from? Where exactly are you from? If you take away your PhD or your Western education, where exactly do you come from so you can speak on this Tongan history? Where it's relevant. But like I said, and that's the difference. That's the difference where I have with this is more analyzing, carbon dating the data points of where these materials come from. That's totally different because it's very just putting technology and people can just put things together. That's complemented with your oral history. So that's where I kind of want to speak on that, Dua. But
Yeah, I'm gonna take a shot to kind of put your what you described there just in kind of like a story or just kind
okay,
of like a structure, Masi.
analogy. Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
just let me know if this makes sense. The data points through science are just data points, right? But they don't tell a story. Our oral history, the correct oral history, gives the context and the story behind the data. If you just take the data on its own, in many ways, it can kind of tell of a story, but it doesn't. It's like in black and white. But when you
mm,
combine the data with the correct oral history that matches with the data, then it's like in color, right? Then there's more
mm,
meaning to the data. But you have to have the proper interpretation of the oral history. Like we mentioned, not all oral history are correct. And you have to kind of filter. It's what you're describing of, where and how you got that interpretation or the source
mm,
of that oral history is kind of like a peer review of a study, right? A peer
correct.
review of the study is where your scientific methods
Yeah,
independent? Are you just giving that conclusion because this guy who wrote your check to fund your to
yeah.
fund your study, is that the reason why you have the conclusions? It's the same thing with oral history.
Mm.
Um anyways, that's my 2 cents. Maybe
No,
it doesn't add additional
no, no,
value
no.
to your position,
No,
Masi.
it makes sense. Makes sense. Well,
um Brown Monk Hawaiian History says Hawaii Loa's granddaughter Kea Kailalo married his brother, which that was one thing that was very
Mm,
common in Hawaii, right? Kind of a
mm-hmm.
sibling marrying situation. We have a
Yep.
situation in Tonga where the tapu system was installed because the Tu'i Tonga married a Hawaiian who practiced this type of
Yes.
brother sister marrying, and it led to a situation in Tonga. So we can see where this is going, and it's high probability. Married his brother Key's grandson Te Aria and placed them at Samoa. They are the answers to this. Possibly, possibly. I don't know how to confirm or not, because what I will say is this: there seems to be a relatively, how I want to say this, there seems to be a barrier, that's the way I describe it, between Manua and the rest of Samoa,
Mm,
right? And maybe those who settled in the other Samoan islands, maybe they come more from the Hawaiian side settlement.
mm,
Just like in Tonga, when the Tuikanukupolu was installed, there was a huge influx of Samoa, thousands and thousands of Samoans into Tonga through the Tuikanukupolu line,
correct.
and that makes sense because the Tui Tonga already has so much influence. The Tui Takalaua already has so much influence over the people. So the Tuikanukupolu's got to figure out a way. How do I get people that are going to do my work and they're going to be loyal to me
And have influence in
and
Tongatapu.
have influence on Tongatapu? Is you have to import. You have to import the people. Maybe something similar happened on the other Samoan islands.
Mm,
Maybe there was a Hawaiian influence that came down and that
mm,
kind of put them at odds with the Tu'imanua,
mm,
which had a closer claim to Tonga from our perspective. And
mm-hmm.
maybe that's why the Tu'i Tongas were more willing to go to and have more interactions with Samoa out of respect to the Tu'i Manua because of that closer family tie than the other parts of Samoa. Possibly Brown Monk. I don't know. Any
Yeah.
thoughts on that, Masi?
No, no. I think that's a good explanation of that regarding like of Ha'amoa now, how it's kind of Tu'i Manua has always been in it's a special category, just
Mm,
even throughout the ancient history. It could be because of the close ties to Tonga. Could have been to the Tu'i Tonga in Tongatapu, and most of those people that were staying there probably Tu'i Tonga followers that went to Tu'i Manua. If we don't know for a fact, but where it's leading, the more and more we discuss this, that the Tui Manua derives from the Tui Tonga. Upolu, Savai, and like Tutuila could have been maybe influenced by the other Pacific Islanders. Tahiti, or maybe even like Lalotonga, Hawaii, and I'm just thinking because there was many times that the Tui Tonga would go and live in Upolu. Many times
mhm.
there's a place in Upolu. People think most modern Samoans would think there's a place called Saina, but the correct term is Sa Ina, which translates that it was forbidden to go there because the Tuitonga would live there, and it's one of the few places in Samoa that they don't have they call it the fa'alupenga, like proper protocols of historic families that you
Mhm.
mentioned in your formal speech. That area, the Sa'ina, means it's an area that doesn't really have one of those things because the Tuitonga would live there.
Outside,
They,
yeah, outside
yes,
influence than the typical
yes,
normal culture.
yes. So that's what I'm saying. Um, the Tuitonga probably just stayed there, and it was just like I said, it's because maybe these were distant relatives throughout the Polynesian Empire, and Manua was kind of like its isolated uh nation kind of thing, and maybe there were some uh
I
interactions, but it was more of like maybe a catch up of a relative, but for some
I
reason it
have
was
a
a special
theory. I have a
special
theory that
special
just popped
category.
up.
What's up?
It
What's
I
up?
literally this theory just popped up. This is all speculation, right?
Okay.
But it is not uncommon for an oldest child, because the Tuitonga would have multiple children. It is not uncommon that a quote unquote oldest male did not become the Tuitonga. right?
Yes.
We look at Urakimata,
Mm-hmm.
right? Between Telea and what's his name? The one that's in Malo in our shoot our ancestor. I
What?
forgot his name.
No, no, no. Tapuoshi? No, no, no,
No,
no. Tapuoshi.
it's Tapu Osi's son, the older son, the one who came in
Oh,
second. Telea showed up first.
yeah.
Um,
Terea and Lomu Eiki.
Lomu Eiki. There we go. There we go.
There we go. Yes, Lomu Eiki.
So
Yes, the older
Lomu
one. Yeah.
Eiki was the older one, right? But
Yes.
because he showed up second,
Yes.
Tapu Osi gave the Tuitonga to Lomu Eiki's younger brother.
Terea.
So what I'm getting to is this: it is not unreasonable to say maybe there was a situation
Mm.
where something similar happened, and the Tu'imanua is an older brother of who eventually became
Sa Tuitonga.
the Tu'itonga, and that's a potential explanation for the respect and for whatever that's very possible because we've seen it
Mm.
happen
Correct.
in other instances in the history. So
Mm.
that could be a potential explanation for it.
Mm. Mm. No, and I can see that too. Like you're saying, we're just trying to make things sense, and just knowing how there's been instances of the older brother losing his title, losing his let's just say birthright, because it is kind of their birthright, but the father of the Tuitonga is just saying, kind of slipping here and there. I kind of noticed you're a bit lousy a little bit. Just give it to the younger one, because we have seen it. That's a close story with us where Lomu Eiki was still respected. He would like get some of the 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 inasi, kind of the first choices, but the Tuitonga went to his
His
younger brother.
brother.
So you know what? That could be Tua, and it's part of that Tongan etiquette. He's the older brother. We'll just kind of leave him to be. We'll go and
Yeah,
check up and maybe have
in
some
the family has
deal.
decided to maintain the relationship of respect. That's what you do.
Yeah,
You don't
yeah,
go and bother them. We've agreed as a family. They
correct.
paid their little sacrifice to keep the peace. Our
Mm,
sacrifice to keep the peace is don't bother him and his
correct.
descendants. That's
No,
just an
good.
idea.
Yeah, good little explanation. That's an
Yeah.
idea.
A couple other comments here. We need to learn how to read our first written language, Kupesi, like the Egyptians or cavemen have wrote
Mm.
with pictures.
It's still an ongoing discussion, Shione. You know,
Yes.
Tua has kind of from the beginning saying that there has to be some kind of written form communication, because in order to maintain, especially you know the astronomical knowledge of navigating and to pass on, especially within the Polynesian Empire, to travel to very precise location, it had to be somewhere, and then maybe over time lost it. I'm not there yet, but maybe the Kupesi was some form of language. To us, looks like what Shione is kind of indicating here. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's my comment there regarding that.
Yeah. Because the Egyptians had the hieroglyphics, but then they also had a more fluid language, right?
Mhm.
So the hieroglyphics was kind of more the pictographic. Maybe that's what the Kupesi was. I'm leaning towards it was a more sophisticated language, but I can see how just like the Hebrew languages, there's simplified versions to kind of you know
Mhm.
make fit more information into a smaller space. So I'm definitely a believer, Shione, that we had to have, like Masi said, a written language because that's the only way you can accumulate knowledge. And I lean more towards a more sophisticated language because just of how sophisticated the knowledge was, right? The more
Mhm.
sophisticated the knowledge, the more I say the language has to be somewhat representative of that sophistication. Comment here from Alex: the two Hawaiians that came down with Mariner, they almost understood Tongans.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say almost. Alexander, from the descriptions, knew exactly, right? Like almost
Mhm.
exactly when Ulkalala told the Hawaiian guy to kill the cook, did not hesitate, did not, I mean, they were, it seems like they were talking to each other and they knew each other's well, not each other's language. They spoke the same language from the description, and that's what, potentially hundreds of years since the Polynesian Empire started crumbling.
Correct. Correct. They were still
Any
our
thoughts,
language
Masi?
was no, no, and that's a good point. To me, the interesting fact, because I understand even up to that Mariner's time, and that's we're talking about what early 1800s, Tua,
Yeah.
right? The language was very close, and that's why I'm kind of just giving my opinion here that when the missionaries kind of solidified a lot of the other islands, and then they were writing their what they thought the language sounded like, and then they were teaching the next generation because it was very common that the missionaries were also their teachers
Hmm.
too. And then the whole formal colonization of formal governments kind of made our languages kind of distinct and changed. That's where I'm coming from because we're talking about Mariner who was in Tonga, the early 1800s, the language, we got somebody, Hawaiians just coming off the boat after Ulukalalas and his men has killed all the Europeans, pretty much saving a few boys and stuff. And the Hawaiians just came and integrated and they already started communicating like they never left. So I find that very interesting.
Yeah, not 100%. Couple shout outs here. Slick Rick, good to
Oh,
see
hello,
you,
Slick Rick.
brother. Um, Here's another. I'm not familiar with this story, AJ. I heard that when the Samoans chased Tuitonga Talakai Faiki and his warriors, they sailed to Hawaii. I'm not sure 100% on the story behind that. Any thoughts on that, Masi?
No, no, I'm not too sure about that one to AJ where he sailed after bestowing the Mariatoa, which is one of the higher titles in Ha'amoa. But yeah, not sure regarding that question.
All right. Nacho business here, kind of on the language, Shione, especially the motifs card on the Tongan war clubs. Yes, that's kind of interesting. You know what was interesting, Masi and
Mm,
Nacho and Alexander and the team here on the language. When I was in England on the trip that I did in Europe, I was walking through what's called the Hatfield House.
mm,
And this is the house that Queen Elizabeth I was living at when she found out her sister, talking about killing of kings and heirs and
yeah.
stuff. Her sister got executed and she found out she was going to be the queen. That's the house
Hmm.
she was living in. And it's like maybe 45 minutes north
Mm,
of London. When I
hmm.
was walking through the house, I was going up the stairs and I looked at these wooden things and I was like, that thing looks familiar. I walk up and they're Tongan war clubs. There were also Fijian and Papua New Guinea stuff, but they were
Mm,
Tongan war clubs, and it has kind of like those motifs that Nacho is talking about, where they would etch it right in
hmm.
little lines in different directions. It's kind of interesting. I wonder how much of these clubs are just sitting around in England in some of these random places.
Mm,
But that did come
mm.
to my mind looking at that comment there.
Cool.
Um, Here's God loves you says, that's what I've been saying, written language in Persia, same with Peru. And
Mm,
maybe our ancestors had a version of that language, God loves you, but I'm definitely a believer there had to have been a language of some sort, written language. Hosea 16:4 talks about the oldest son will hold most of the father's title, like Tongan culture that came before we could read. Once again, certain missionaries like George Vason would consistently say in their record they saw the Tongans practicing a lot of cultural rituals and behaviors that were very similar to ancient Israel. Shione.
mm,
So that's wouldn't be surprised if that's a correlation there.
mm,
Shione, the flower pattern in our kupesi is the flower of life created by overlapping spheres that create the center of the flower. This is only found through knowledge of mathematics. Interesting, because I've always wondered that, where you have the kupesi that kind of has like the eyes, but it has the flower patterns going on top and the
mhm,
bottom.
mhm.
Very interesting. Appreciate that. Any thoughts on that, Masi?
No, nothing too much. I think of the story of Dad. You know the lotus flower of where the
Yeah,
word lotu comes from,
comes from.
and the yes, and the lotus flower is very significant in in places because it's significant in Tonga because it only sits still in still water, and there's a meaning behind it. Apparently, like heaven and like underneath is like underworld or hell kind of thing. But the word lotu comes from the word of that flower,
Flower.
the lotus flower.
That's what
But
they call
yeah,
the lotus flower.
correct.
Very interesting.
Mm,
And then actually that lotus flower design is in Christianity and many other religions.
mm,
So yeah, we'll come back. Appreciate the comments once again. Shoot them
thanks.
over. We'll walk through them. Let's come back. Here's a couple things that we highlighted. I think
Mm.
um
I'll read the highlighted
yeah,
version to
read that highlighted version quick, Masi. You can see it.
So, archaeological evidence for prehistoric interaction is critical to understanding the role of inter-societal contact and the power strategies used by elites in the formation of complex societies. In the first half of the second millennium AD, a powerful and complex society emerged in the Tonga Islands that was unique in the Pacific for the way it aggregated an entire archipelago under a single political system. Considered a maritime empire chiefdom, Tonga has recently been categorized as a primary archaic
Hmm.
state that, along with the late prehistoric politics of the Hawaiian Islands, there were the most complex societies in prehistoric Oceania.
Yeah.
The control, or do you want me to go with the next one? Or
Yeah, I
you
was
have
just gonna
anything to
stop.
add?
This is one of our critiques
Hmm.
of the Tuipulotu and the Tuimanua
Hmm.
empires is it is it is already a major effort just to control nearby islands, right?
Hmm.
Just to have let's say in a sense the majority of Fiji, the major islands, control, single political structure, single leader in those islands.
Mm,
That is a huge feat to just do that. That is why we are somewhat doubtful that the Tuimanua and the Tuipulotu were able to be an expansive empire because we don't have a strong, even not even a strong oral history of
correct.
control over all the nearby islands in Samoa for the Tuimanua and also for the Tuipulotu. Now, the Hawaiian Islands, that's relatively new because King
Correct.
Kamehameha, that's one of the first times that ever happened. But
Correct.
everyone in Polynesia and in oral history recognizes Tonga had a single ruler, not only in Tonga, but throughout many other islands. But I just want to kind of reiterate that what this paragraph is kind of saying is just having control over your 50 closest islands in your little area is a major feat. And they quickly recognize that Tonga achieved that. But that's
Mm.
kind of what I kind of took out of that context there.
No,
But
nice, nice. No, because I was gonna mention that too, because what they've only found as being like actual, like somewhat of a political structure that kind of function on its own. They recognize that the Hawaiian Islands, like what you said, though, was much of a modern thing. Kind of the same thing with the current kingdom now with the Tuikang Polu. That's when it was happening. But when you go before that, Tonga has been recognized as still a maintaining existing power and political structure throughout all of Polynesia. So, it just adds more to our claim when they're doing all these studies and gathering data points throughout Polynesia and also the carbon dating that seems like Tonga's the only empire that ever existed. So,
yeah,
yeah,
so hard to deny. Hard to
hard
deny
to
when I
deny.
see something like this. But go ahead, Masi.
Okay, so the control and redistribution of exotic goods is hoisted as an important source of capital used to support political centralization, but it has not been feasible to model prehistoric interaction in the expansive Tongan state using archipelago data because of the paucity. How do you say that?
Yeah, I'm not
Uh,
sure. Yeah.
Paucity of excavations at the central places of the chiefdom, and the likelihood that most imports were made in perishable materials that tend not to preserve in tropical contexts. As a result, it has been unclear how far Tongan influence extended, whether the political economy,
We can probably read maybe the next couple sentences here. Just
yeah,
finish off that paragraph. Oh, let me trying to slide here.
no worries, no worries. Here
Just
we
finish off
go.
that
Yep.
paragraph.
Involved control and distribution of prestige exotic goods by elites, and whether the polity's interaction sphere was only one of several prehistoric networks responsible for the movement of people, goods, and ideas in the Central Pacific. What's your thoughts on that, Dwarf?
Yeah. So really, for me, what they're trying to say here is they recognize that the majority of the goods moved around were probably perishable, but they're doing
Yes.
the stone ones as that's one of the ones that would have
Lasted long in
lasted
the
lasted
in the
long enough.
climate.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they do recognize this doesn't give a detailed, like you're saying, this does not give the context that the oral history gives. They're saying this is not an exhaustive smoking gun that it'll
Mm-hmm.
explain how everything interacted and moved um around, but it's pretty powerful
Mm-hmm.
and pretty convincing from my perspective.
Yeah, and another interesting thing is when it mentioned there that they don't understand of how what's the extensive vast influence this
Yeah.
Tongan society, we all know is the Tongan empire under the Tui Tonga, because we do have the capability of going all the way up to Japan, up to Asia, Southeast Asia, even up to China. Like, there could have been some materials that probably came from there during that time. But I'm just saying, what's only lasted because of the climate of the Pacific is only those stone materials. But I thought that was interesting.
Yes. No, I agree. Um let's come down to the first.
It's just the Fonuatanu.
Yes. So
Mm,
to zoom out just a little bit, some of you may have seen this before, but Tevita Fale has a
mm,
similar map. And this is, like, as we mentioned, Masi, this is the first time outside of Tevita Fale that we have seen a similar
correct.
map, right?
Correct.
And so, just for a quick, I'll read the description below. Plan view of Lapaha showing the location of the largest tombs associated with the Tuitonga chiefdom, labeled by J structure number. Lithics
Mhm,
associated with tomb wall excavations are listed in the data sets S1 and S1 appendix. Stone tomb walls are outlined in blue and earth mounds are
in
green.
green.
So this is one of the things that we're talking about when we say a major civilization. We look for ruins, some type
Hmm.
of physical representation
Mm,
of sophisticated or complex knowledge. So, just in quick summary, this is land that exists today. And when it says reclaim land, this is all man made extension of the land, landfill. There was a small island that was off of here, but it was just first they started off with a road, right? Then they said, you know
mm,
what? Let's just make 100 acres of man-made land and a man-made harbor.
perfect.
Okay. Now just think of what type of complexity it takes to do that. That's civil engineering. This is labor management, right? Because you're going to need a ton of labor. And all this material were from excavations from these ditches. They
Mm,
basically took rock material and dirt from this ditch system and built man-made land. This is where the Kauhala Uta, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is Taufahau Road, Kauhala Uta, which kind of referenced the Tuitonga, and then the
Yeah.
Kauhala Lalo, which primarily referenced the
Tuihatalao.
Tuihatakalao. So this is where they're getting, and this is where they mentioned earlier that they were digging here because it was a sign of, it was a prestigious sign it that you had something from an island hundreds or thousands of miles away. That's why they're finding it. And they specifically chose this because that's where the Tuitonga was. Everyone knew that's where the Inasi, that's where the Polo Polo came
Mm,
from throughout the empire. And they brought
correct.
it there. But this is for everyone to understand 100 acres of man-made land that goes into the ocean that has survived hundreds and hundreds. There are people living on this man-made land
Today.
this day, which is just crazy. I don't know. Any thoughts
Yeah.
on that, Mussy?
No, despite all the climate changes and the hurricanes still hitting Tonga, it's pretty amazing the how sophisticated and the amount of work the forefathers of Tonga created this, because that's pretty crazy. And what I mentioned earlier with the laku angafue, with that property in our family, there
Yes.
was a
Right
I'm
here,
imagining I'm
right?
imagining because yes, I'm imagining the people from Ha'amoa coming with their, because it's with their food and stuff, throwing it in a certain spot so they will go and work. And I'm talking about there could have been thousands, because that amount of work, we're talking about thousands of people, maybe from Upolu and Sabai, all coming to work to build for the Tuitonga, because that's a lot of work, and we don't even know to this day how long it took to build
Yeah.
to build that. So, nah, it's pretty crazy, and that's what we kind of. It's and another thing is pretty crazy that Devita Fale did the same map before the technology, that because I'm pretty sure these guys, what, 2010 to 2014, used a drone or whatever to kind of capture it and then kind of drew this, but Devita Fale already knew everything of how it laid out, and also provide the the story of why it was created way before this came out. But I just thought it was pretty crazy what
Yes.
Evita Fale did.
Yeah. And I mean, and this is pretty much what he drew out, right?
Hmm.
And that was what, 30 years ago,
Yeah, 30, 35, yeah, years ago.
right? And this is coming from
The
the
20,
the uneducated crazy guy that
yeah,
has no right to tell history, right? That the
yeah,
academics throw under the bus and say, who is this guy, what does he
yeah.
know? And yet
Well,
he's telling people stuff that 30 years ago that only science is catching up to now.
yes. Well, and that's the thing he mentioned. He's like, when you talk about my family, I have to correct you and have to interject. And that's what kind of spurred his whole kind of crusade of this whole path of rediscovering our true Polynesian history kind
Yeah.
of thing.
So this is the background, right, where they're getting all these stone artifacts that they're going to do their study on. But we thought it was really important just to kind of just look at this when we ask people, show us some evidence of a empire, a sophisticated, unified empire with a leader and the ruins. This is the kind of stuff we're kind of talking about,
Yeah.
right? I mean, this is why Grok says the Tuitonga is more likely an empire that existed than the Tuimanua,
Too many.
because the data is pretty convincing.
Tua, you should
Um,
have you should have asked the question to Gronk about the Tuipulotu, if there was any existence.
I don't want to waste Grok's time
Okay, okay, okay.
because, like we said, we can at least look at the Tuimanua and there seems to be something
Yes,
there,
yeah,
right? Not a whole lot, but unlike and you guys will love this. One of the things we've asked is like the Tui Pulotu to provide a name. One of our viewers did provide a very extensive name maybe we'll get through it in the comments and we'll
Okay.
mention it at the end of the Kava session here. But yeah, we may have discovered the first ever. We may have discovered, maybe we'll frame it that way in a positive way.
Okay.
The Polynesian Eyes podcast may have uncovered the first ever
Tupolotu.
Tu'ipulotula, and it's very
Yeah.
extensive list. So maybe we'll get to that because that may be
Oh,
groundbreaking.
groundbreaking for Polynesian Eyes podcast. Oh, wow.
We'll slide down here. There's a couple things here to kind of discuss. Look at the distribution of where all the different sources of stone came from on Tonga Tapu,
Mm,
right? We have Ewa, obviously part of Tonga. Within Tonga, East Fiji, West Fiji, Upolu, Savaii, Samoa, Tutuila. Kind of surprised that they separate. Oh, it's because American Samoa, right? And
correct.
then East Polynesia and the Society Islands. So Tahiti,
Mm,
Bora Bora, all
Lalotonga,
Rarotonga,
Marquesas,
that whole
and
area right there. We also have some from the Rotuma. But
Rotuma.
look at, and like 66% of the samples that they found
Hmm.
were from outside of Tonga.
Yeah.
So then we come down to Samoa, which they used as a control. Pretty much it's
Also
all from Samoa.
materials. No, and like we mentioned earlier, no, no kind of evidence to prove that other islands of the empire were coming to Samoa with other
Yeah.
materials.
And like you mentioned earlier, if I were to show this data and let's say we removed it, and I'm just going to pose the theoretical question and say, take the Tongan name out, take the whatever name out, and just say, look at these two graphs.
Hmm.
Which one do you think was not just an empire, but as some have posed, that the Tuimanua was a trading
Yes, good
specialist?
point.
Which one is the actual trading center point?
Mm,
I
mm,
would think anyone would probably lean towards this,
mm.
right? Because you're
Yeah,
seeing a variety of goods from throughout Polynesia, east and west,
correct.
found on Tongatapu.
No, good. Yeah. And these are just data points. These are guys. They're just like I said. They're just keep giving us the data, carbon dating, researching, and digging dirt. This is what they found.
Yep. We did also come across this table, which
Mm,
in a sense is describing um, the Samoan axes that were found in other islands versus what was found in Tonga. And as we were mentioning earlier, it seems like, especially in Tutuila, and well,
mm,
it has them combined, and Samoa were the specialists of axe and stone tools.
mm.
That is where they seem to have excelled at.
Yeah, that was definitely
The
their skill in Polynesia and the
Yes.
empire.
So some of the ideas. So the question now becomes, how did all the axes from all these different islands get there?
Mm,
Right? That's the question. Because obviously we've explained no, Tonga has it from multiple different areas, Eastern Polynesia, Northern Polynesia, and Western. We have a theory on how that would have worked. So the theory that we have is, so the polo polo was the first fruits, right? That was mostly agricultural. It was much more a religious and faith-based tribute. What was more like a tax tribute was the inasi.
mm,
And the inasi was, wherever you came from, what was the best product or um, agriculture, or whether it was domesticated animals, whatever it was,
mm. Mm,
It was like the entire Polynesian empire brought their best as a tax and a contribution to the Tuitonga through the Inasi. Now, the oral history and some of the understanding we have on the function of the Inasi, it wasn't just the Tuitonga or the Tuiha Takalaua just taking everything and keeping it. A big part of the Inasi was actually, and this is a very common practice, like we've discussed in the past, in the traditional way of hosting a feast in
mm,
the Tongan culture. Everybody, if a guy was really good, he had a lot of pigs, really good at raising, he would bring the pigs. One guy was really good at farming ufi, he would bring the ufi. Another
mm,
person was, and so everybody would bring what they were good at, right? Bring it to make the feast. They would hold the feast. What was left over from the feast, you wouldn't give back to the guy who brought pig, right? Because he already has
pigs.
lots of pigs. So what you would do is, oh, the guy who brought the pigs, you would give him ufi,
Mm,
right? Because that would complement what he already has. With the
mm,
guy who brought the ufi, you would give him maybe the pork, or and so there was an effort to distribute what was brought in, and it makes a lot of sense because that's how you would reward and maintain the leadership throughout all the different islands. Is they would take their little quote unquote piece of the bartering or the system back to their islands. And
mm,
if Samoa were the most proficient, they provided the highest quality axes, one would assume that's one of the tributes that they would bring. And that being a very valuable tool during those times, one would assume that that would be something that would be given to the other leaders of the other islands who came. And that's how you could potentially explain how all the axes were distributed
mm,
throughout the Polynesian Empire. Just some thoughts
mm.
there. Any
Yeah.
things to
No,
add there?
just to add on. I mean, the that's during the inasi. That's the reason why a lot of the Samoans really specialize, not only with the materials of creating axe and creating langis and other stone structure too, but also the ie, the kie. They
Yeah,
would bring that. Samoans are really known for making really fine kie
mats.
tonga,
Yeah,
yes, kie more, and bringing that over. Fijians, like I said, the Fijians were really known because it was such a vast island with like birds and different kind of things. I can see them bringing that.
feathers and yeah,
Feathers. Haiti known for its jewelry and other aspects of like pearls and stuff, and they can probably bring like that's during the whole part of the inasi. And then I'm just seeing with even the cultural parts, even in Tongan society now, when they distribute it back, that usually even when couples get married, the male would always bring the pig because they usually will have the pigs bring a pig when they come and propose to the wife or to the what fiance's family, and then they would bring usually because you're the female side will bring all the mats where
kolo.
the
Yeah,
koloa, the mats and the ngatu because the female side really hold on to those things and they do an exchange, right? The male's family will get some of the koloa and the female family get the pigs and the food. So like this kind of practice of these ancient ways are still being passed down even to today, and it's just a it's almost like when your ancestors do something so many times for how many generation, you just haven't you just haven't inclination to just to act on it. Many
yeah,
Tongans still hold on to that and do it.
yeah.
So
It's been such a part of the culture and quote unquote DNA. You just
yeah,
can't help but
yeah.
just do it. Let's catch up on a couple comments here. Here is Asione, the lotus flower in India is the flower of life for us. It's the kupesi. Yeah, that seems to be a popular position in the
Mm,
chat on the lotus flower, the tree, the flower of life. Um, Tongans had the most intricate and mathematically accurate designs, most symmetrical designs, according to James Cook. Interesting. It's my first
mm.
time hearing that. God love you.
Oh,
Appreciate
God
that.
love you.
That's an interesting comment. I didn't know, and I'm assuming that's Captain James Cook.
Mm,
Um, Alexander, Vikings were Tongans of the Atlantic. Yes, the biggest difference between the Tongans and the Vikings could only stay in the northern hemisphere. One of the biggest things that separated the Polynesian / Tongan navigators. We could navigate northern and southern hemisphere because the Polynesian Empire crossed into both
correct.
hemispheres.
No, and isn't it because of the advancement, and that's why they call Polynesians the master navigators than any other
Correct.
groups, is because they could navigate both the northern and southern hemisphere.
Yeah. And the southern hemisphere, this is why a lot of the academics for decades, even hundreds of years, said there was no way our ancestors could navigate, because in the northern hemisphere, easy, North Star, you always know your direction.
And the
Southern
landmass,
hemisphere,
easy to
yes,
navigate, is the landmass in the
large
northern is
land
much easier.
masses.
Yes,
Yeah,
but not little islands is difficult.
very difficult. And as we were mentioning earlier, is everything moves in the southern hemisphere. You have to be more sophisticated. You have to better understand the heavens, and make certain adjustments to be able to navigate the southern hemisphere.
Mm,
Um, yes, it was the only empire starting with Tangaloa. Samoa Atoa is the name of the first empire because Tangaloa resided. That's a position we hear quite a bit. Brown Monk, we take a different position. Our position is that Tangaloa lived on Tongatapu. Um, and maybe when you are willing and able to join us for an episode, we can go through the list that you have and also have further discussion on the more of the how and the why, the Tangaloa position coming from Samoa. We'd
mm,
love to discuss that. A couple questions here. Where did the stone from the Langi come from? There's multiple ideas on that. God loves you. Some people say from Tonga, from Ewa, and even Uvea, and even
mm,
further areas. There have been some of the ideas on where the stones for the Langi come from, even the Ha'amonga, which is
correct.
just kind of crazy to think. Even if they came from just Ewa,
Mm,
miraculous how in the world you're able to move that. That would be a difficult thing to do today, let alone, you
back in
know,
those days.
hundreds of, well, in the Among Us case, thousands and thousands of years possibly.
Well, and that's my question, Tua. Which one is harder, building and transporting to build the Ha'amonga, or like creating a whole new land in that time? Like,
Fair point.
that's
Fair point. Fair
so
point.
that's why it doesn't. I mean, it's just crazy that I was like, they probably
Yeah.
think the Ha'amonga was easier after they created a whole new land and a harbor for the Tuitonga. I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
crazy. I don't
It,
know.
it is. It is. And it's because, I mean, how many times, even in our modern quote unquote science and engineering, we
Mm,
build a building and then look at the Leaning Tower of Pisa,
mm,
right?
mm,
That was a lack of civil engineering and structural engineering that led to that building
yeah.
leaning and tipping over. And yet here we have the Kauhalalalo side, 100
Mm,
acres that people
correct.
have been living on for hundreds of years
Yeah.
to this
and
day.
and like I said, with all the climate change that's happening and people are kind of freaking out with that, that land is still there and people are still happy to live there. They're not concerned about the the rise of the ocean. But
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm a little lost. Does this comment make any sense, Masi, on the separate? I don't know why they separate. I see what you did there. Maybe they're responding to another comment, but if you could clarify that, Brown Monk, maybe,
mm.
because I see Slick Rick here is having too much fun. You guys are having too much fun in the chat. We don't believe in having fun. And Mauhau, welcome. It says Tuipulotu means where the first circumcision started. Yeah, put the accent mark on the poo side. Huh? I see where you're going there. Um, see here, Ewa has big holes in their cliffs, and it looks like limestone. Very interesting. Yeah,
Mm,
possibly. I do know that there are some rumblings in the oral history that some of these stones came from Ewa. These large stones. Yeah, large holes like caves in Ewa. New Zealand rock climbers in Ewa have some great footage on YouTube of the big caves. You know what? Let's see if we can find that.
Interesting. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
because I do know that there's some like underwater caves in Ewa, but I haven't seen.
Man, I tried to go to Ewa, but I went on a day. It was a Saturday, and then all the Ewa people, when they go to Tongatapu, they do all their big shopping, and the boat was full. So my wife and I couldn't go to Ewa. But that's one of the islands I definitely want to go and check out and explore. And apparently that, and I was just thinking, out of all the seas in Tonga, that behind right there, going to Ewa, behind in the back of Tongatapu, apparently it's one of the roughest part of navigating. I'm just thinking if they were gonna bring the stones, those limestones from Ewa, that hey, that's amazing. It's amazing.
So I found a video. I don't know if this is the one you're referencing. God loves you, but we will pull it up and watch it. This is why we appreciate the feedback because I'm not aware of this and I grew up on Tongatapu and have no idea. I do know that there's like some underwater caves, but that's about all I knew.
Okay. The only underwater caves I kind of really know, I thought were in Bava'u, but
Oh, you know what? I'm showing the largest cave in the USA. What? That's not it. We want Ewa people.
nice, nice.
Smoking cave and big ovava tree. What is the smoking cave? Let's try this. Let's see where this goes. Can you see it? Oh, there we go.
It's loading. There we go. Yep.
This is, they don't know the end of it. Man, it's awesome.
Is that a waterfall?
And the ajo.
Man, that's awesome. And, yeah, so that's Ana'aho. It's beautiful, but very, very dangerous. They had two guys that came across. It was getting dark, and they came across here to head to town, and they didn't realize that Ana'aho was here. One guy fell in, died, and fell in, but he was on a slab of like a step down there. So the soldier went down. A couple of soldiers went down and brought him up.
And unfortunately, actually, I don't know. Did he say was it a kid or a grown man that fell?
Looks like it's a man.
Oh, okay. And unfortunately, I think one of my buddy's good friends growing up, his brother, younger brother, died in Ewa, fell in something similar to that. So, yes, I'm gonna try and find. He said climb Ewa. Oh, here it is. I think this is the one.
Right, the guy that made Climb Ewa. I wanted to include a short intro here because since I shot the film in 2016, a fair bit has happened since then. So stick around for the end for an update as of late 2017. For now, the story begins with an American climber who lived on the island several years before we got there.
I was bored with my life in the States and just wanted to try something different. I applied to a number of jobs, and the Peace Corps came back to me and said, you know, how about business advising in the South Pacific? I was like, sweet, all right, let's go.
This is why we so glad to hear the Tongan government allowed Starlink. It was silly because you can now have people like this gentleman live in Tonga, probably get paid US wages, doing online stuff, and contributing to the Tongan economy. Anyways, that's my 2 cents.
Go. But I have one condition. The condition has to be there's got to be rock. Like if you send me to a country that there's no rock, I'm going to leave. And so when I got the invite to the Kingdom of Tonga. I got on Google Earth, which had just opened up, a year or two before that, and just started fishing through it, looking at everything, and I'm like, okay, Aowa is where I want to live. There's rock everywhere, but Aowa is where I want to live. And I got lucky enough to do it.
My
There's
first
your rock.
climbing
There's
on
your rock.
Kava through the grapevine, I think a climbing returned to New Zealand and mentioned I'd seen these amazing cliffs in Tonga. And then I heard about a chap called Jason, an American Peace Corps volunteer that had spent 2 years on the island, who had actually documented the cliffs. So I looked him up and got in contact with him, and he sent me this PDF that he had put together. And I was instantly, impressed by the photos and by the fact that, he seemed so sure that there was great climbing potential on Aowa.
The whole east ridge line of Aowa is just a massive limestone cliff with all sorts of different spots that you can climb. It was both really magical and really torturous to be the only climber in the country. About a third into my service, I came home for a visit, and I brought probably
Man, that's beautiful shot.
back with me because I realized what was available. I brought my static lines, my dynamic lines, my drill, everything I brought back. And still, I was the only climber. So, I had the chance to abseil and check out a bunch of the rock and do some exploration, but never actually
Brown Monk.
climb, which is frustrating.
Didn't even know how beautiful it was because I never been there, and I lived on the island right next to it. Crazy.
The basic plan for this trip is to spend 2 weeks here, getting around the island and figure out the best locations and actually bolt some routes. My wife and I kind of decided that we'd come here in August.
Just a funny note, don't take the Lulutai planes. We've had some issues with safety. That's why the New Zealand Chatham
Islands is currently flying the domestic routes.
So just a heads up, if you want to go see the beautiful cliffs, just make sure you pick the right airline.
Well, no, and I was gonna say going on boat is not too bad. Going from Tongatapu to Aowa, it's for hours wise, I think it's only 2.5 or maybe 4 the most, but it's not too bad. But
Not too bad.
But sometimes, if you get seasick, apparently it is pretty rough, especially when you go the back of Tongatapu going hit Aowa. The seas can get pretty rough, but yeah.
And I let people know, and Tony and Elisa immediately were keen to come along. Jean and I just recently got married, so it's kind of our honeymoon. So we've got some friends along for the honeymoon and a film crew,
Well, I guess we're hoping to find a bit of a package in terms of a climbing destination, something that's got enough quality that, would actually recommend it. And then the whole package of having a tropical holiday, a beach, some snorkeling.
When Greg asked me if I wanted to come along, it seemed like a really good idea, especially if we could turn this into some form of venture that the community could get involved with, they could benefit from.
Climbing in Aowa has come up at least once a year since I've left, and it's either the Ministry of Tourism or one of the tourism businesses that says, hey, there's a climber that came through, wants to talk to you about this stuff. And nobody's had the wherewithal to put it together because it's a pretty massive undertaking.
I guess we did do quite a bit of planning for this trip. A lot of that was around trying to get local contacts. But we were really looking to try and get in contact with people from local authorities or the Ministry of Tourism, and actually trying to just understand who was in a position to give us permission to climb here in Aowa.
To me, the best way to do this would be to establish lines that everybody can get on. Really, Whangatave is the easiest to access.
So Whangatave is a beach on the northeast coast. The cliffs step back
look at that.
away from the sea. Arriving at Aowa, however, we started our trip staying at the Ovava.
See if we
Tea
can
Lodge,
get into
and
those.
The guy that runs it, Latani, he recommended that we go and see the kind of animal running down here, like maybe it was a pig or something. Oh, that looks good.
Sweet.
It looks perfect. It is. It's just beautifully, slightly overhung, pocketed limestone.
Yeah, featured enough, eh?
Yeah,
But
it's
still
featured enough.
some slippery stuff, so.
I mean,
Not a pushover.
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect that would be too difficult, but really fun.
How it flows down there. It looks so
Maybe further over.
A lot of places to grip, I guess.
Yeah,
more difficult.
I can
good.
see
It looks
love
like
the
it goes
whole
pretty much all the way to the top
rocks.
without that darker grey stuff that's kind of sharp. That looks. Whole wall looks good.
You could easily put a track up here.
It's crazy because
just zero.
like growing up in Tonga and Tongatapu, never seen a lot of terrain like that. You know what I mean? Because Tongatapu is just pretty much flat.
A lot
It's
of
kinda-
very different, very different.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Cleaning, freaking pleasantly rounded holds. Wow, that's quite a relief. Yeah, to find like there is actually good quality rock, like super compact quality rock. Doesn't look sharp at all.
Look at that, dude.
Featured, like
Maybe that's the
just
holes
right
and
amount,
stuff that he's
probably.
referring to.
Range of grades.
Mm.
Yeah, beautiful beach. What more could you ask for?
So good at how it's got this clear base too. Like you don't even need to clear anything.
It's a proper crack base.
Yeah, it's like
Oh,
you've got
man,
the chill out rocks.
Manicured.
You've got your trees to put your hammocks in.
These trees are cool, aren't they? Looks like a nice, really nice rock just right behind that tree there.
Yeah,
and
to actually
and
keep
up
it
over
afloat.
yonder, that light coloured rock.
Guess we should check out just what's around the corner too.
Yeah. Let's walk around. Kind of more anxious now about the king's permission,
I know.
you know? Like, oh shit, knowing that it's really
That's
good
a good
rock.
point. That maybe some
Yeah,
giant
look at
mountains.
that
That's what
beautiful
Ewa is.
Street
Mm.
rock up there.
Yeah, that straight line, you go through all that cave, super featured overhung jungle gym.
It's like better than I thought. That's better than I thought it might have been.
Not sure God loves
There's a
you.
start boulder for you.
Yeah, what a cool way to start. Smooth, crystalline kind of limestone.
Beautiful, man. Can you imagine?
So
I think we got a good idea on that. But can you imagine like
Mm.
we're doing a climb with the ocean in the background, right? The jungle
and that's-
beneath you and you're climbing. That's a really cool. This is kind of the unique stuff that Tonga needs to identify and highlight.
No, and that's what needs to be pushed out too, because to also
Yeah.
stimulate the that type of hobby. Obviously, if this guy from the U.S. finds this very fascinating, now he's sharing what he's found to the New Zealand Palangis. They're finding fascination with it. So that's a very unique thing. So that's something, like I said, I haven't heard of it. I'm surprised it was a thing of rock climbing in Tonga, but see, that's something that can also stimulate the economy for Ewa. So
Yeah.
just for the modern discussion for for Tonga to build more economic activity.
Yeah. Hey, that was a good diversion there.
Yes.
But any
Malo, God's love you.
Malo. But any kind of closing thoughts, Mussy, on the whole study, the whole position we're taking, the whole discussion? Any kind of closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts is I think we've able to at least maybe you can agree to this or not to it, but at least we're coming to the conclusion that the Tui Manua seems to be a title that was created during the Tui Tonga era. That's what it seems like it's
Yes.
coming down.
Yeah.
And you've kind of started this discussion, and it makes sense that it's usually the oldest brother or sibling, and maybe there was some kind of issue, just like with how Tangaloa happened with the Tui Tonga, and even in the Tui Tonga era, not all the firstborn kind of got the title. Something happened, and they still give someone from the Tui Tonga a high title of Tui Manua, and they just kind of live the rest of their life within the Tui Manua, which has always been collected to make it like what is Samoa today, but we know that Manua has always been a unique category throughout its history. So that could explain why it was a person of rank that did not receive the highest title, more of a rank within the family, but not the highest title of Polynesia during that time. But yeah, no, thank you, and I appreciate everyone's contribution and comments. Keep bringing those comments. If you have any questions or anything, we'll do our best to answer them. But I appreciate everyone's creating a great live session for today in this Polynesian Eyes podcast. Malo.
Yep, not 100%. I appreciate once again, like Masi said, always fun to have the interaction. That's why we try to do the lives more often, especially for like general episodes, because then we can do the live, interact with the viewers, and then also we'll still upload it into the podcast channel, on the audio and on the visual, as well. Looks like a water bear is full. Wow. We must be missing out on some of the chats here or something. Oh, I see it now. My bad. See, this is the thing. I appreciate all the comments and stuff, because I try my best to stay on top of the comments, but it looks like we missed some. So AJ's comment brings back. It says James Cook wrote in his journals about marijuana. Marijuana that was disputed from the Tui Nalania, who comes from the land of the talking lion.
That's why. Waterbird is speaking like that. He's not. Taking all the kava powder away. He's putting it all in and drinking the whole thing. And he's had a revelation that this is what's happening. Maria Waterbird.
Hey,
we believe in personal revelation. We believe in personal revelation.
I think you're not on Earth. I think you're in Pulotu right now. You're kind of halfway between. Oh man, that's hilarious. Hey, sorry guys if we missed some of the comments, and but appreciate it. We try our best to get to all the comments. Honestly, I have been pretty shocked on how successful we've been so far, to be honest, on the podcast. We were hoping to accomplish a couple things. Number one, have fun, right? Hey, Nalania, Brown Monk likes that one, Water Bears. We wanted to have fun. We wanted to have an opportunity to discuss some ideas, encourage discussions, also, give David Tafale a platform to express some of his findings and his effort and research, and just have what we have right here, a digital Kava session. We've enjoyed it. Really want to reiterate, it is not our intent to be divisive. We want just to have the conversation, let the ideas compete, have the ideas fight, but as brothers and sisters, we can enjoy each other's conversation, share ideas. We learn a lot from each other, and honestly appreciate it. I can't express how helpful sharing, commenting, subscribing does for us, because it just helps us get the message out further. But really appreciate it. Yep, 100%. We look forward to hosting the digital Kava sessions as well. Malo Clyde Moore and Malo Shione Kurt, Malo Albito. And as always, stay curious, ask the questions, and most importantly, remember, we are all the same people. We all are one people. We should be very proud, and we should be looking forward to the opportunity to discuss our history. We have a lot to be proud of. And honestly, I really do believe this. We have a role to play in this world. And I haven't, put my thumb on what exactly it is, but there's just too many things. Our ancestors were led here to the last place on earth to be settled. We are the last place to be discovered. I think there's something we're bringing to the table that the world needs, and it's becoming evident by how Polynesians are just having such a huge influence above our quote unquote weight in the world. So appreciate 100%. Couldn't agree more, Brown Monk. This is a gathering of our people, and I 100% agree with that. Looking forward and hearing from Danny Suntoko. Yes, hopefully we can get Elon Musk, now that Starlink's there. Maybe we can get some reliable internet He has made an effort to join, but just the internet connectivity is failing us. But with that being said, thank you, everyone. Keep fighting the good fight. Stay curious. And until next time, see you later. Malo. And for whoever still has some kava left over, kataki iareva, in one drink, finish it all. Peace.